All right, welcome back to Mind and Magic. Today I want to talk a little bit about acceptance and what that really means. So let's get into it.
So I should stop judging and accept.
To start.
So no matter what I do, hooray for me because I'm a great guy. It's all good. I mean, you back your truck over your own kid and you accept? What a load of crap.
Hey, Jesse, I know you're in pain.
No, you know what? Why I'm here in the first place is to sell you meth. You're nothing to me but customers. I made you my bitch. You okay with that? Huh? You accept? No. About time.
Such a powerful scene from the hit show Breaking Bad, which in my opinion is still one of, if not the greatest show of all time, for the simple fact that the ending was flawless, with no loose ends remaining. But in this scene with Jesse and the counselor for the addiction recovery program that he's in, there is a flaw in what the character Jesse here thinks that acceptance means or refers to. See, Jesse here thinks that accepting means or equates to putting up with. And that's not what it means at all. See, accepting doesn't mean that you tolerate or put up with people abusing you, taking advantage of you, or treating you poorly in any way. That's not what it's about. Accepting is really acknowledgement. For how can you fix problems if you don't acknowledge that you have a problem to begin with? Because the very first step in solving your problems is accepting the fact that there is a problem. If you can't accept that there's a problem to begin with, then it's not going to get solved and you're going to keep having the problem or being the problem, depending on the circumstances. But if you can accept that there's an issue, well, now you have a starting point in which to solve it. Now you actually have a point A in which to figure out how to get to point B. And this goes for any issue, including those that we use magic to help remedy. So that's the first major benefit of acceptance, which is acknowledgement, because it gives you a starting point from which to operate. The polar opposite of which is denial. In denial, there is no acknowledgement of any issues at all. Therefore, they do not get resolved. Now, the next real benefit of acceptance is that it's one of the major factors in what I call leading a charmed life. This is something that magicians and those in the know take advantage of. And I'm going to try to break it down in a way for people to understand. And in order to do so, I'm going to go ahead and state the exact opposite again, in that all stress comes from resistance. And I'll say that again. All stress comes from resistance. Resistance to what? Well, the way things are going. Right? Something happens that you don't want to happen, or things are going the way that you don't want them to go, and you get stressed out. You're stressed out because you're resisting it. You're trying to prevent it from happening, even if it's already happened. It is far more productive and beneficial for you when that happens to switch to acceptance, when something is happening or has happened that you don't particularly care for, because now you have a starting point to fix it and resolve it somehow. For resistance only causes stress, which is being in a state of denial. Acceptance, on the other hand, is the state of going with the flow. And going with the flow, we had talked about, corresponding with leading a charmed life. Anytime I've ever tried to force something into happening, or been stressed out about it, worried about it, and somehow tried to force my way out of it, it never turns out very well. Why? Because what you resist persists. So when you resist something, you get stressed out, and that keeps you in that stressful loop of denial. Even if what you're stressed about has already happened and there's nothing you could do about it, you're stressed out because you don't know what to do about it, and you just wish it never happened, you're in denial. And the quickest way out of that loop, out of that stress that you're in, is acceptance. This is the way things are now. That doesn't mean they have to stay that way. You are magicians. You are magical practitioners. You have more options than most. So just because you, say for instance, get a bad diagnosis from your doctor, that doesn't mean it has to stay that way. But you accept that this is your starting point so that you can get to the place that you need to be. And I hope I'm being clear enough in explaining this. There is a strange dynamic to this in that the more you try to control things, the more out of control your life can become. Which sounds strange coming from a magician because a lot of people assume that we just try to control everything. But that's not really the case, and it's something that you'll learn over your years of training, but some people take a really, really long time to learn it, and so hopefully I'll be saving some of you many, many years of banging your head against the wall and stressful situations. Stress is not good for your health. It ages you. And so we want to cut out as much stress as we possibly can. And that starts with acceptance. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't make solving your problems a priority. Again, acceptance isn't just taking it. It's merely acknowledging it so that you have a point to start from. And it's also a type of surrender. And again, that's going to sound misleading because it makes it seem like I'm saying, well, don't fight to change things if you have an unfortunate, stressful situation happen to you. No, that's not what I mean by surrendering. I'm more talking about to the divine and the subconscious. Surrendering to the fact that you are not the only author of your reality. That this is a co-creation between you and the divine, including undesirable or stressful situations that may arise. Acceptance is surrendering to that. It's surrendering to the divine. It's letting go of the wheel, going with the flow. And when you can do this and release that resistance, that's when the synchronicities start popping off. And the coincidences can happen. The coincidence has always meant something different to me since I've been in magic, because I know it to be a co-creation incident. Everyone else takes that word to mean a randomized occurrence. But when coincidences happen to me, I understand that the divine subconscious is fulfilling my requests. When we just try to do it all ourselves, and try to keep the divine out of it, that's when we run into problems. When we're stressed out and resisting, we're not trusting in the divine to handle it. And it's a display of a lack of faith. For if you had 100% faith, would you be stressed? Probably not. Where's the faith that things are going to work out for the best? Because make no mistake about it, having faith is a super accelerator for getting the divine subconscious to fulfill requests on your behalf. We need to avoid getting into a state of resistance, stress, and denial because that is evidence of a lack of faith. And without faith, your magical power will go way down, meaning your control over your reality and your situations goes way down with it. Meaning also that the more you try to control reality, the more reality is going to resist you while you are in a state of resistance. I'm trying to make this as simple as I possibly can, but this really goes deep. I had a situation where I was sort of stressed recently. I was recently informed that there will be a change in my health benefits this coming year, which may make the difference between myself having a $0 copay for the only medication that I take, which helps treat my allergy to cats, of which I have several, and $3,000 a refill. There's a big difference between 0 and 3,000. And I'm not going to lie, I got a little stressed about it. I was resisting it. I didn't want to accept it until I did my meditation, and I was reminded about faith and instructed specifically on the ways of acceptance. Now, you're not going to find that in any occult or magic book. You're not going to get that from any other YouTube channel. Why? Because it doesn't come from men, it comes from the source. No, you get it how I taught you in the Accessing Knowledge videos on communicating with the divine and your subconscious. And it'll set you straight if you're wavering, which we all do. We all waver. It doesn't matter how experienced you are. You will be tested on every level, and you will pass many of them and you will fail many of them. But the key is to learn from them so you can adjust accordingly. A lot of what I teach and have taught on this channel comes directly from what I've learned from the divine in my meditation and cross-communication. Not everything, but enough. And this time I had that download of instant information that those who have experienced it will know. And it told me about acceptance and showed me where I was going wrong, because stressing about it was being resistant to it, which is having a lack of faith. All of that tied up in a neat little instant download. Had I not stressed over it, I wouldn't have been on the phone for 8 hours that day trying to find out the details about it. And so my lesson is now your lesson, as what happens sometimes. I mean, we've already gone over letting go of the wheel, going with the flow, magic being a co-creation between you and the divine, a partnership, if you will, and it really likes being acknowledged as such. But the way that it tied in acceptance with acknowledgement and faith really tied a lot of that all together. So the really big takeaway is that the difference between acceptance and denial and the stress of resistance that causes is that acceptance puts you in a much better position because you have faith and not resistance, because we know that what you resist persists. And so when you're stressed, you can unintentionally get into a loop where it doesn't resolve, creating more stress and more resistance. Acceptance isn't about allowing bad things to happen to you. It's about resolving them quicker. Got to look at it from a different angle. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about ideas. When it comes to ideas popping into your head, you can deny, reject, and banish those all day. And that's fine. What I'm talking about are situations that have actually materialized and or have happened that you are going to resist because it is not in your favor. As the saying goes, when things are at their worst, you have to be your best. And how are you going to be at your best if you don't have the faith and confidence that things are going to work out? That's like having the main character in an adventure novel not have faith that the author is going to have things work out for them. And that's kind of what the distribution of labor is like in this co-creation of reality. The divine is the author of the story, and we are the actors playing the role. And we just went over in the most recent video how we can switch those roles at will with the practice of assuming God forms. But even when we do switch roles, we never lose sight of the fact that we are still the main character. We all have individual lives and, as such, individual stories, and we are the main characters in that story. But we're not always the author. Yes, our decisions have consequences, and in that way we can shape our own reality and story. But there's going to be a lot of things happen that seem to be out of our control. And that's when we need to accept or acknowledge that the divine knows what it's doing and that you'll get through this. Acceptance. I want to thank you for joining me, and if you enjoyed this little talk, please hit the like button, and if you leave a comment, I'll be happy to read it. I hope that you'll accept my invitation to join us on Patreon for ad-free early access. We're about 3 months ahead of YouTube at the time of this video. Also visit my website, mindandmagick.com, for programs and more. This is Frater Xavier for Mind and Magic, and I'll see you next time. Take care.